Breath of Fire 1 is a game that kind of surprised me, if I'm being completely honest. I was expecting to like it more than I did, and it kind of... well, it kind of sucked. But I can explain easily why. Because if you're thinking right now, but Breath of Fire 1 was a good JRPG, and I can understand that, try to really put into your mind the whole game. This is a perfect example of Sunshine Syndrome, something that I coined just a few months ago over in Super Mario Sunshine. A game that's actually good up until a certain point, and then you're better off just putting the game down. Breath of Fire 1 is simple, but it has some solid gameplay ideas and concepts. The way it handles death, the way it handles experience gain and power progression, and its equipment, itemization, it's very Dragon Quest-y in several ways. And that's good and that works until it stops working. And it never develops past that point. You never really get to the point, even in the final boss fight, where you're doing anything other than just attacking the enemy. And I know that can be said for several JRPGs, but the truth is, in this one, there's not really even an option to do anything other than just attack. In addition to that, the enemies have too much health, and the boss fights are dull, boring slugs, and there's all kinds of issues all over the place with backtracking. In some cases, you'll go through a dungeon, finish something, and then you have to manually walk out of the dungeon because exit doesn't work. Or in some cases, you'll go into a dungeon, leave the dungeon, and then have to redo the section you just went through because screw you. That's ignoring the fact that if you don't have a walkthrough, this game is going to suck because there are huge swaths of the game where good luck figuring out what you're going to do next. But it's not just figuring out where you're going to go next. The walkthroughs are necessary for figuring out where the optional items are, or the fact that you can get the dragon power-ups, or the fact that you can get the dragon gear from fishing, or the very nature of how the flea market works. Even knowing what some of the items and equipment do in this game relies on having a walkthrough. This is walkthroughitis to a T, and the only game I can think of that does this worse is its sequel. So, overall, not exactly a game I would really recommend. You're probably thinking, well, is there any good stuff? Actually, yeah, there's several good things. The visuals are interesting and engaging, especially in the combat zone, and there's a lot of good viscerality to when you're actually fighting the enemy. There's the beginnings of an interesting story here that it doesn't really do anything with. There's no interesting characters. In fact, I would go so far as to say there's no characters, period. And yet it does have moments where you could tell they wanted to do some kind of a character story and just, for whatever reason, didn't. Obviously, the localization does not help. Not that I put that on Ted Woolsey, who did the best he could with a very limited budget and very limited time. In fact, personal opinion, I think this game actually has a better localization than its sequel. Overall, this is a fascinating bit of gaming history, and you can kind of see why the Breath of Fire series took off. I feel like this is yet another one of those games that's more interesting for its historical significance and its uniqueness than it is for actually being good. And we never cheated on this particular playthrough, because you don't really have to in this game as long as you have a walkthrough. But if you're ever interested, I can at least passively recommend it. You can get it on Switch Online, for example, and I believe that's it at the moment. But if you have a chance, if you have an interest, go for it. We are going to be playing Breath of Fire 2 next, and I'm legitimately curious how much worse that one's going to score. And if that sounds like an unusual statement, you'll see what I mean when we get there. See you guys.